Yes, because I got a new laptop. So what will happen is there will be no code, as Jay Harmster said today. I'm going to close the iPad presenter. Let me quit there, leave that session. Okay, let me see. Okay, there we go. All right, yes. So if someone has got their microphone on besides me, please mute yourself. Thank you. Yes, please do that. Okay. And please, no need to do your video, I think. Let me see. Share video. Okay, there we go. All right. Okay, may I mute everyone? All right, let me try and mute. Sorry, let me mute everyone. I don't know if I can mute everyone. Who is a naughty person who's not muted? Okay, I'm going to mute that person. I think that's everyone that's muted. Okay. Right, I've muted them. Hopefully I've muted them. Okay, so, ladies and gentlemen, as I was trying to say, this is really awkward, having to lecture without slides, but the lecture notes are uploaded onto E, so you can download those slides for today, but what we'll do is we'll discuss the UJ grid today. All right. I hope everyone is seated correctly. There should be an open space between everyone, please. Okay, so who can tell me what we did last week before we ended the week in terms of lectures? Who remembers? Besides, we did a while loop, and then we introduced you all to the concept of. Does anyone recall? Yes. Arrays. Yes, all right. Okay, arrays. Who can tell me what's so amazing about arrays? Anyone online? Yeah, there's no code. There's no code. Thank you for everybody else who's indicating there's no code. What is amazing about arrays? Yes. Okay, you can basically use it to store more than one value at a time in a placeholder. Does this make sense? And remember that whole exercise I did here last week where I showed you, well, okay, you guys were online, so you saw the video, and then the physical people who are now online, you remember what I did with the video. The lecture slides are already uploaded, yes? Okay? So what happened there? I chucked a whole bunch of things into the box and I said, yay, things stored. But what was wrong with storing everything by chucking them all into the box? Online people don't have comments. You don't have comments. Is there anyone who remembers what happened last week? Yes. Yeah, it's a lot more difficult to get to the values we wanted immediately. And that presents an issue because at the end of the day, as K.M. Masengu points out and Jay Barath mentioned, it's messy. You can't get immediate access to the values you want. The idea is even with an array, yes, you can store multiple values at a time, but you also still want to be able to go to the box immediately and say, I want that value specifically, and when I go there to that position in the box, because I've divided the box up into multiple locations, which we call elements, okay, spaces, and then when I put a value into that array, it's called an element, I can fetch the element I want. Does this make sense? Right, does this ring a bell? Technically, that KM Masengo is saying it's not ordered. It's not quite right when you say it's not ordered because you can put values that are out of order in your array. Does this make sense? You can put a value 10 in there, and then you can put in the value 1 in there, and then the value 6, and then the value 100, then the value -1. All that's happening is that you're putting these values in a certain space so that you know you stored it in that certain space, and if you go back to that space, you will get the value you need. All right. Does this make sense? Okay. Now, we've all learned last week that the way to work with arrays is first and foremost when we want to declare an array, we declare it by doing what? So how do we normally declare a variable? We just go private, and then the name of my variable, and then you go as whatever data type, right? But what if it's an array? How do we then say, hello, VB, I want to put more than one value in there at a time? What is the magical extra thing you have to do to make sure you can make it store multiple values? And then the online people are like brackets, brackets, brackets. Okay, so the physical people, yes, it's brackets, but where do I put the brackets? Can I put it right at the end after my data types? No. One person remembered. Why not? Does VB tell you, no, you can't do it? Does VB go, cool? Yes, it says cool. But who's going to stop you now? Come on, who's going to stop you from doing that? It's like a trick question, yeah. What's going to stop you then? Okay, if it's not who's going to stop you, then what will prevent you, or what will say, I'm not going to put those brackets at the back, I'm going to put it right after the variable name. What stops me from doing that? Okay, so J Baroff is saying, VS will allow it, but it's bad practice. Is it bad practice? Who thinks it's bad practice? Nobody here in the physical room says it's bad practice. Okay, BJ Malachi saying it won't work. It will work, right? Physical people, it will work. Has anyone tried? Or did you all go, oh, we were told not to do it, so we won't? Are you all nodding? Are you agreeing with me that you didn't do it? Okay. So Tumish Robape is saying it will be a context error. And then LM Mojakomo says it's an option explicit. I don't quite know what that means. The rest of you? Any ideas? Do you remember vaguely why I said don't do it? Besides, okay, yes. So the problem is when you put the brackets at the end. So, you know, you got option, no, private, and then my arrays as integer, for example. Now put the brackets at the end. That becomes an array list, which is not the same as what we want you to work with, which is just a normal array. So how do we declare an array, not an array list? It's got to be private, the name of your array, your variable name, and then brackets as data type. See the difference between the two? Okay, so after that, we also said, okay, that allows us to declare what type of array. So in other words, if we just put open bracket, close bracket as integer, what does that give us? How many elements does that array create? Did anyone? I'm assuming everyone had a great weekend. Yes? Did the online people, you know the online people right now, they're like, yes, they know what's going on. They say that we get a dynamic array. Does that sound familiar? Yes, no? Okay, so you get a dynamic array. What is a dynamic array? So the online people have been going on. They go, yeah, a dynamic array is this. What's a dynamic array, physical people? Yes. Okay, so it's effectively a placeholder where you're saying at runtime, so when you start the start button, you go, I don't know how many elements this array should have. I don't know because it depends on what the user says. And I can't read what the user's mind says in the future. Okay? I mean, I can go, hello user, I'm writing a program for you right now. How many spaces do you need? And you can tell me you need 10. But will it be 10 today? Will it be 10 tomorrow, next week, etc.? And you will say, well, it depends. Today I might need 10, tomorrow I might need 11, and then the next day I might need only 3. So you've got to give the user the option to choose. And that's what makes it dynamic. You're going to allow the user to specify how many elements there are, and so we create a dynamic array instead. Now, that means that at some point in your program, if you don't know what the size is now, at some point in your program later on, you need to resize that array, which is what some of the online people have said. And the way you resize that array is using the command. Who can remember? Redim. Do you remember that? So once you know what the size is, you would then say redim, and then you specify the array name, open bracket, you specify the size, close bracket. But you don't go, oh, by the way, it's integer, because you already know it's integer. What else did we establish from me throwing things? Obviously, the online people saw what happened, but you guys are online. What did you notice about not what you couldn't do with an array? So can you say, well, an array is capable of storing multiple values, so I'm going to stick in an integer in there, and a string, and a boolean, and another string, and then a double. Can you do that? What's the rule there? You have to only work with one data type. Do you remember this? Now, this is a really, really important rule for 1A. Informatics 1A, when you're working with arrays, it can only be capable of storing, when you work with an array, it can only be an array of one single type. Okay, so these are just recapping some of the rules that you need to know for today's lecture. So first and foremost, if you're working with a dynamic array, in other words, you do not know what the size is, at some point, you're going to find out from the user how many. Your user will tell you, I want this many. Once you know how many, you will then use the redim command to tell VB, I know how much space to make now. So go back to that variable and redimension. In other words, change the size of this array to whatever I tell you. And it works like redim, the name of the array, the variable, open bracket, and you specify the size. Okay, got it. Right. Now, at the end of last week's lecture, what we also established was that, okay, arrays can be resized. On top of it, we also need to make use of what we call an index to specify where in the array to go and put something and where in the array to get something. So when we want to assign our number adding program, and we said, ask the user, how many numbers do you want to add up? And the user goes, oh, I want to add 7 numbers together. Then you would resize the array to 7 elements. After which, you then use a while loop to navigate through each element in the array. So you go, while your counter is less than the number of numbers. You would then say, what is the number for number 1? Because you're using the counter of 1. Then it becomes 2, then 3, then 4, up to 7. And you go, give me a number, get that number, put it in the array, in brackets, the counter, because the counter represents 1, then 2. So you go, in your box, value 1, value 2, value 3, value 4, and so on. All right. So some questions are, can we constantly resize the size of an array, say maybe after every button click? And that is a very good question there. What do you think, ladies and gentlemen? Can we resize the size of our array after we click the button every time? So what I'm assuming that what H.T. Niyakaramba is suggesting is that we don't go how many values you want to add from the get-go and say 7. Rather, we click on that button. So every time we want to add a number, we go, give me another number, give me another number, give me another number. Can we do that and say, every time we click on the number, we first started with our array of 1, then we click on the button, and then the array becomes 2, and then we click on the next time, and it becomes 3, and each time we resize that array as it becomes bigger, 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 bigger. And as we add in one more space, so in other words, we're extending the array, we put in a number into the array. Do you think we can do that? Any guesses? Yes, no? Okay, right, let's just do this. Who thinks we can? Hands up. Hi, don't be shy. Who thinks, no, it cannot be done? No, 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 no. Okay, and then obviously let's not feel the people, let the people feel left out. Who doesn't know? That's not everyone. Everyone needs to participate. Okay. All right. So some people are like, yes, no, not yet. Isn't that the point of read them? So some of you are, but if you read them, you're resizing the array, are you not? So surely I can resize my array each and every time. That makes sense, right? So will it work? That's the question. Because the whole point is they're right. Isn't that the whole point of read'em? If you use read'em, you can resize your array. So why can't I press the button each time? And each time it just goes, well, your current array is size 4. And if you click on this button, it becomes size 5. And you press on the button again, it becomes size 6, and so on. You're like sitting there, You sense what is going to happen. Okay, now some people go, yes, but it would take memory. So some people get a sense of, we know what we're talking about. Ladies and gentlemen, the answer is yes, you can resize the array the way it's been suggested. But no, it won't work based on what you know currently. You see, what happens is, when you go and use the read'em command, it actually creates a brand new placeholder. Okay, it's going to be called the same name, but it will take up new space in your computer's memory. Now, why am I saying, just hear me out. It creates a brand new space in your computer's memory, and it slaps the label on it and says the name of this space, this placeholder, is your variable name. Okay, so what is the problem now? Turns out that when it makes a brand new space, so in other words, previously you had an array which is capable of size putting one element in there, and now you go read'em and increase it by 1, creates a brand new space. It says, yeah, here's a new space. You can store 2 values here. Okay? So then you put the value, give me a number, 25, you put 25 into the second element, right? And then you press read'em again, and you go, oh, create a brand new space. So it creates a brand new space, and says, this space is capable of 3 values. And then you put the third value into the third space, the third element. And then you go read'em. So it goes, oh, we need another space. So we create a brand new space of 4 elements, and you put the 4th value in there. What am I missing here? If I make a brand new space each time, okay, a brand new placeholder each time, what do you think is happening? Yes. You're working with a brand new array. So in other words, you know when you first said, I want to put a value in there in element 1, you put 1 in there, let's say. Then you go, oh, I want to create a brand new array. So it creates a brand new array, new placeholder. 1 is not copied across to your new array. Okay, you put 2 in the second element. Then you go, I want to create another array. So now there's a third array capable of storing 3 values, but 2 hasn't been copied over to the new array. And you put 3 in the third element, and then you go, oh, I need another one. So you create 4 spaces, but 3 is not copied over to your 4 element array. And obviously 1 and 2 long gone. 1 didn't get to 2, 2 didn't get to 3, 3 doesn't get to 4, and so on. All right. So in other words, when you redim, all it's doing is creating a brand new array, not a copy of the old array and then extending it, but creating a brand new placeholder altogether. So can you then use redim to go for every button click? Use redim? Not at the moment. Can you do something about it so that it does? In other words, hey VB, I want you to create a brand new placeholder for me so I can store more values in there. But I also want you to take the existing values in my old array and copy it into my new array. And the correct word to tell VB to do this is the keyword preserve. Does that make sense? It's English, isn't it? You're telling VB, redimension this array for me and preserve the contents of the array. All right, preserve. Now, how do? You go redim, preserve, the name of the array must be the same name, open bracket, and then whatever the new size of your array is. But now you're thinking, well, all I'm doing is I'm making it larger. Can I make it smaller? Sure, you can make it smaller. You might have an array of size 10, and then you go redim, preserve the array name to size 5. It will shrink it. What will happen is it will copy the first 5 into your new array. But the old stuff, the other 5 that's at the end, 6 to 10, gone. Keep that in mind. All right, so now everyone's gone, oh, cool. We're going to use redim preserve every single time. Good idea? Bad idea. Just think about it. Should you use redim preserve each and every single time? Online people? Physical people? You're not sure? Okay. Okay, now these people are like, no, bad. You know what? I think the online people are looking on the internet. And they're going, see, you see the people physically in front of me like, can't check the internet now. We're being put on the spot. But the online people are like, nobody's checking, quick. Okay, right. The answer actually is don't try to minimize the amount of redim preserve commands you have. Okay? Because it does, as someone earlier on mentioned, it takes an incredible amount of memory to do so. Because it's allocating memory space on your computer memory, but on top of it, you're copying the contents of the old array onto your new array. And that's a lot of operations. So in an ideal situation, we normally do not use redim preserve. In your semester test, we tend not to ask you questions that involve using preserve. Okay. If you're absolutely not sure whether you should use preserve or not, then use it, because it's better to go, I don't know if I need to keep this information, then rather say, okay, let's keep the information. But it's not ideal. Okay, so if you use redim preserve in your second semester test or in your exam for 1A, I will know that you were not really paying attention to me when I said that in class today. Okay, does that make sense? Okay, because I'm not a fan of unnecessarily copying content from an old array into a new array, just because. And the way we set our semester test, there's really no reason for you to do so. On that note, and I don't really want to get into the whole thing, but in computer science, where it's all about optimizing your code and making sure you're writing the code and functioning in a very memory unintensive manner, you will notice that they say the redim command, the redim preserve command specifically, is something you don't do each and every time. Ideally, an algorithm that you would work with is you go, oh, I'm nearing capacity in my array. What I'll do is I'll calculate increasing the capacity of the array by 10% so that you do one operation and you grow it each time. Does that make sense? It then minimizes the amount of copying that needs to happen. Just to give you a sense of how bad it is. All right. Okay. Oh, there's like conflicting information about when the semester test is. Does anyone physically in front of me, without the benefit of the internet, know when the semester test for Informatics 1 is? Yes? Okay, so have you got that? Okay, I see the people are now agreeing with what you said, because there was a 26th of March. I mean, if you want to write on the 26th, we can organize something. RJ Matuba, you want one on the 26th? No. Okay, the Elsie Phillips answered for them. No, with capital letters. Okay. All right, so ladies and gentlemen, let's talk now about the display. So last week we kind of teased to you. We said, okay, you've got your array, and maybe, just maybe, you want to display the content of the array, because you store all these values in the array, but you want to display them on the form you want to display it on the form so the user can see, oh, these are the numbers I added, right? Because I got terrible memory. I want to see what numbers I added each time. That sounds good, right? I mean, imagine, how many of you would be happy entering 100 numbers and not knowing what you entered? Are you okay with that? Is anyone okay with that? Would you rather like, oh, I entered 99 here. I know it doesn't sound exciting, but you see what I'm getting. Okay. Right. So we want to display. Now, up to this point, you only know about text boxes and message boxes and input boxes, which, by the way, input boxes you only use for, you know, if I ask this question in a semester test, I would expect you all to be going, yay, I'm down for answering that question. So let's try this again. Input boxes are used for inputs. Yes. And message boxes are used for, well, technically not so much output, but more for alerting the user, right? Because we don't really want to use message boxes for going, here's the answer. Flash, you want it again? Press the button. Okay, so it's for alerting. And for output, you use text boxes. But every time text boxes are like single variables, aren't they? They can only store, or not store, they can only display one value at a time. So can you imagine you've got an array of 100 values and you want to shove 100 values into that one single text box. Is that going to work? No. So if you want to display 100 numbers, it technically means you're going to have to put 100 text boxes on your form. Aren't you glad Mr. Olivia did not give you a practical of that nature? Right. But we can. Nothing stops us from going, hey guys, display 100 values. But now we're going to be nice about it, and we go, it turns out you don't have to drag and drop 100 text boxes onto your form. You can drag one item onto your form, and that's called a UJ grid. So just a quick show of hands, who's managed to install the UJ grid control onto their own personal computers? Hands up high. So online people, there's one person. You, okay, all right. Okay, let's try this. Who has not even looked at it? It's okay. I'm not going to judge you. There, you know, some of you are brave. Brave. Okay, right. So, for those of you who've installed the UJ grid onto your machine, have you tried using the UJ grid yet? Okay, now, ladies and gentlemen, yes, I'm glad. So Tia Manamela is pointing out I did, but it did not appear on the general. So today in my slides, what I wanted to show you was that you have to start a very specific project in order to have the UJ grid appear on your form. And that is, you have to use the Windows app. You know which one I'm talking about. So you've got different projects. But it's got to be the one in the brackets. With the brackets is .NET. Okay. You've got to choose that one, because that will then allow you to choose .NET version 4.7 something. And you press next. And then you will see the UJ grid appear on your form if you've installed the UJ grid like we asked you to. Okay. Yeah, is it framework 4.7.2? Yeah, there's someone nodding their head and saying yes. I'm not going to remember the exact numbers. I'm terrible at remembering numbers. I'm also terrible at remembering dates. So if someone wants to tell me it's the 26th, that's the semester test, I'll believe you. Okay. All right. So, the UJ grid, what you do is you drag and drop it onto a form just like you would with a text box. But then there are a number of properties you have to set on your UJ grid. The first is obviously the name of the UJ grid. And as you know, a text box has the prefix txt. A button has the prefix btn. And let's not go there. Labels, let's leave labels alone. But you know. Okay. So with a grid, the prefix is GRD for grid. GRD. I know it's missing an I, but 3 letters, Okay. So GRD, whatever the name of your control is. Right. And then on top of it, you're like, oh, let me change the text of the grid, right? What's wrong with that concept? You see, a grid is actually like an array, a collection of text boxes. So an array is a collection of whatever data type you want, but a grid is a collection of text boxes. So if you go, the grid grd, whatever .txt is equal to something, what's wrong with the picture? When you shove something into the array, can you just go my array equal to 10? Have you tried? Has anyone tried? Online people, have you tried? Has anyone tried and said, I'm going to take a number and I'm going to put it into the array without specifying the index? And if you did try, you will know that you get the squiggly red line and it goes array integer. And you go, duh, it's an array of integer. I want to put this integer into the array. You tried? And then it goes squiggly red line, array integer. This is like a Japanese song with like pineapple pen. Okay, array integer. They don't mix. Why? Because it's an array of integer is not the same as single integer. That is why you have to specify where in the array do you want to put this integer. The same thing happens with the UJ grid. You can specify the text. You can say grid whatever .text is equal to and then specify a value. But then you're going to find that if you run the code, it displays the text in one space only. Which space is that exactly? Has anyone tried? Has anyone tried? Oh, see, nobody's tried. So if I told you, hey, for homework right now, not right now, like when you go home, go and specify the name of the grid, .txt is equal to hello or something. And you press start. Provided you put the UJ grid on your form. What will happen? You will find, oh no, I shouldn't spoil it. No, let's not spoil it. You discover it for yourselves, okay? However, before we do that, in your properties window, you specify the name. You're also able to specify a number of other properties. And that includes okay, now, I know I'm wearing my mask, so sometimes this doesn't come across. So I want you all to pay careful attention to what I'm about to say. All right. You specify the rows, R-O-W-S, rows, okay? And you specify the cols, C-O-L-S. Okay, what do you think those two do? If you go, the name of the grid .cols is equal to 10, and the name of the grid .rows is equal to 5, what am I doing? I'm specifying the size of my UJ grid to indicate how many rows in total and how many columns in total this grid has. Okay, In addition to that, there's also the properties fix rows and fix columns. You'll notice that when you drag and drop your grid onto the form, there's a gray column and there's a gray row. Now those are your fixed rows and fixed columns that are used for labeling your UJ grid. Right. You can specify those fixed rows and fixed columns to any number as long as it's less than or equal to the number of rows and columns you have. Does this make sense? So you can't go, my entire UJ grid has 10 columns, but the number of fixed columns is 20. Does that work? No. Okay. Does this make sense? In addition, there's something called scroll bars, which explore on your own. Okay. Explore on your own? Okay. And there's some online people going, oh, but what about row and what about col? Some people are already jumping the gun. So yes, ladies and gentlemen, in addition to rows, plural, and cols, plural, there's also row and col without the S at the end. Now, without peeking at the internet, online people, and you guys watching you, don't cheat. Who can tell me, by guessing or using your common sense, what do you think the difference between rows, plural, and row, singular, and cols, plural, and col, singular, actually are? Yes?
I think it's a specific spot in the rows. Let's say that, for example, if we talk about one row, then we talk about a specific spot in the rows.
Someone's cheating. Yeah, exactly that. But I mean, I was even just going for something a little more simple by rows is plural. So in other words, lots of rows, and row without the S is singular, so only one row. Does that make sense? It does. Does it make sense to everybody here? Does it make sense to everyone online? Absolutely. That's exactly it. Why do we need rows plural, rows singular, cols plural, cols singular? Because as this gentleman said, rows and cols are for specifying how many rows and how many columns I want in my UJ grid. In other words, specifying the size of the grid. But row singular and col singular are for, here is a bunch of text boxes. Which of these text boxes do I want to put a label in? And then you need to specify which row singular, which col singular, because you're giving a coordinate system value. Okay, now here's the one thing you need to be aware of, and that is this. The very first top left text box on your UJ grid is row 0, column 0. Okay, really, really important you realize this. Row 0, column 0. So, what that means is if we use row 0, column 0, or the first row and the first column for labels, it will now make sense why I told you last week that we ignore element 0 in our array. Do you remember that? I said when you resize an array, when you set the size of an array and you say read an array to size 10, you technically have 11 elements, starting with 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. The reason why I said don't start on element 0 in your array is because we want to map that array into your UJ grid. And with your UJ grid, you normally have labels for your first column and first row. So that's why it would align nicely that element 1 goes into row 1. Element 2 goes into row 2, and so on. If you decide, no, I'm going to start at 0, now you're going to have to go +1 each time to make sure you map correctly on the UJ grid. Does this make sense? Okay, now the UJ grid, remember, is your visual display. It doesn't store any values. The array stores values. And so the whole idea is if you look at the code for today's lecture notes, you'll find that what I do is I store the value in the array, and then from the array, I fetch the value and I put it in the UJ grid. And every time I want to specify and put something on a UJ grid, I actually have to specify 3 values each time. The first is which row, which column, and then what text to place in that row and column. Can you go column first, then row first? Yes, you can. Nobody stops you. But I would prefer that, ladies and gentlemen, you start working with standardizing. Which do you specify first? Do you specify row, then column, then the text? Or do you specify column, then row, then text? This is really important. Can you put text first and then specify the row and column? Yes, no? No. Aha. Why not? Because have you ever tried to bomb something and then say where? And I mean in battleships. Have you ever played battleships? Some of you have. Okay. Right. So that is, I'm going to stop here. I do apologize, ladies and gentlemen, that I can't give you visuals. Could I ask you all to please try the code that is on the slides today and try and just play around, implement it, and go, oh, what happens if I play around with the code? We will go through it on Wednesday in greater detail. And then the other thing I actually wanted to tease you with further down the line is the while loop is actually terrible for arrays. It is absolutely terrible for arrays. There's a better way to repeat, going through your iterating through your array, and that's called a for next loop, which we will also show you soon. Okay, so thank you, ladies and gentlemen. I'll see you on Wednesday. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen that are online. Goodbye.